Tonight, our special transmission as the Israeli parliament rejects formation of a Palestinian state. Assalamu alaikum and good evening. This is Muslim News Canada on Muslim Network TV. I'm Aisha Ashraf. Today is the 138th day since Israel started its indiscriminate war on Palestine. Israel has intensified its airstrikes on Rafah in southern Gaza, leading to the destruction of a mosque and killing 3 Palestinians. There are 1.5 million displaced Palestinians seeking refuge in Rafah. The Palestine Red Crescent Society says a critical situation has unfolded at Al-Amal Hospital in Khan Yunis. The hospital has been in a 30-day siege by the Israeli forces. Residents in northern Gaza are suffering from food shortages. For weeks, they have been using animal feed to survive. Reports by the United Nations show that Israeli attacks in the past 4 months have devastated Gaza. 2.4 million Palestinians have been pushed to the brink of famine. Reports are emerging of an Israeli raid on the city of Bethlehem in the West Bank. 3 Palestinians have been killed and 8 wounded in a shooting attack near the Mali Adumim settlement in the occupied West Bank. The news comes after an Israeli settler has been targeted in the area. According to the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, at least 702 children have been injured across the occupied West Bank since October 7th. Reports show Israeli settlers have carried out 573 recorded attacks against Palestinian people and their property during the same period. The death toll from Israel's war is alarming. At the time of writing, Israeli attacks have killed 29,313 Palestinians. Another 8,000 are presumed dead under the rubble. 69,333 Palestinians are injured. Israel's revised death toll from Hamas attacks stands at 1,139. A U.S. representative at the International Court of Justice is opposing an immediate and unconditional Israeli withdrawal from Palestinian territories without security assurances. In a week-long session, the World Court is hearing from around 50 nations regarding the legal ramifications of the Israeli occupation. Speakers from South Africa and Saudi Arabia have called for Israel's withdrawal from occupied Palestinian territories following the 1967 war. Egypt, Russia, and France have also addressed the World Court, condemning Israeli settlements and advocating for Palestinian rights. Representatives from other nations are advocating for adherence to the UN framework for a 2-state solution. On the other hand, U.S. Representative Richard Visek has highlighted Israel's security needs and its right to self-defense. The U.S.'s stance follows its UN Security Council veto of a ceasefire resolution. Israeli representatives remain absent from the hearings. The Israeli parliament has overwhelmingly backed Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's stance against recognizing an independent Palestinian state. The declaration has garnered support from 99 out of 120 lawmakers. Members of the opposition have also voted in favor of not recognizing a Palestinian state. Netanyahu insists on direct negotiations for any permanent agreement with the Palestinians. He's rejecting external pressures for statehood. Palestinian officials condemn the vote. They say they have a right to statehood without Israeli permission. International pressure for a 2-state solution persists. However, there are notable obstacles. Critics argue that Israel's actions make it increasingly unrealistic, including the expanding of Israeli settlements. Lindsay Hoyle, Speaker of the UK's House of Commons, is facing backlash over his management of a critical vote supporting the Gaza ceasefire. Members of the ruling Conservative and Scottish National Party are condemning Hoyle for deviating from precedent. They say Hoyle allowed a vote that helped Labour dodge a rebellion over its stance on Israel's actions in Gaza. The debate in Parliament was initiated by the Scottish National Party, which put forward a motion calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. Labour and the Conservatives then proposed amendments. They said several conditions should be met before there's a pause in fighting. Hoyle's decision to permit multiple amendments, including one from Labour, triggered uproar and accusations of a constitutional crisis. The Labour amendment passed without a formal vote, drawing criticism and accusations of a hijacked debate. The backlash overshadowed discussions on Gaza's humanitarian crisis. Some MPs are expressing regret over the distraction. In a joint declaration released today, a coalition of over 75 Canadian civil society organizations is urging three ministers to either stop genocide or resign. They have put forward a set of demands for ministers Melanie Joly, Ahmed Hussein, and Mark Miller in an open letter. The letter was unveiled earlier today in a press conference arranged by Canadians for Justice and Peace in the Middle East, Canadian Muslim Public Affairs Council, and the Canadian Palestinian Social Association in London. Speakers highlighted the intolerable situation faced by Palestinians due to the policy failures of these ministers and the Liberal government. The speakers say policy decisions made by these ministers, potentially under the guidance of the Prime Minister's office, have worsened the crisis. They argue that these policy shortcomings endanger Palestinian lives. They say their policies are also a disregard to Canada's obligations under the Genocide Convention and the International Court of Justice's provisional measures. The coalition insists that if the ministers are unable to address these critical issues, they should step down from their positions. The open letter outlines specific demands for each minister. These include expressing unequivocal support for the World Court's recommended measures and to reinstate humanitarian aid to the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees. The letter also demands that Canada impose an embargo on military trade between Canada and Israel and remove barriers hindering family reunification visas for Gaza residents. In related news, as Ramadan approaches, a nationwide Muslim body, alongside numerous local congregations, is issuing a stern message to members of parliament. They are demanding that unless the members of parliament publicly call for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, demand the reinstatement of funding for the UN's aid agency, and denounce Israel's war crimes, they will not be permitted to enter mosques. An open letter emphasizes that MPs unwilling to make these commitments publicly will not have the opportunity to address congregations. Released today, the letter also demands MPs must oppose the flow of arms and military equipment to Israel. It says Canadian politicians should champion the right of Canadians to express solidarity with the Palestinian people without fear of reprisal. The letter is signed by the National Council of Canadian Muslims, the Canadian Council of Imams, and several prominent mosques. Superior Court Justice Renee Pomerantz has ruled that the actions of the killer of Afzaal family in 2021 constitute as terrorism under Canadian law. Nathaniel Veltman was convicted in November last year by a Windsor jury on 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder. Veltman targeted the Afzaal family with his truck while they were out for a walk in London. Later, he admitted to police his intent to intimidate Muslims. Yumna Afzaal, 15, along with her parents, Madiha Salman and Salman Afzaal, were killed. The family's matriarch was also killed. The couple's youngest son survived the incidents. Under Canadian law, first-degree murder conviction mandates a life sentence with no chance of parole for 25 years. However, Pomerantz was tasked with determining which trial evidence the jury used to reach their verdict and whether Veltman's actions constituted terrorism. This is the first instance in Canadian history where an individual with white supremacist views meets the terrorism threshold. Relatives of the Afzaal family have expressed relief at the ruling. Somalia has granted Türkiye the mandate to defend its waters and train and equip the Somali Navy for a decade. In return, Türkiye will receive a share of Somalia's marine zone revenue. The deal is being dubbed as a significant defense and economic cooperation deal between the two countries. Somalia's prime minister says the agreement aims to quell threats like terrorism, piracy, and illegal fishing. Türkiye has had a military presence in Somalia under the United Nations anti-piracy missions since 2009. Thank you for watching. Our news is produced by Muslim Network TV, which is a not-for-profit organization. We need your support for donations. Please scan the QR code on our broadcast or visit muslimnetwork.tv to donate now, so we can continue to amplify the voices of Muslims in Canada and abroad.